I am Richard Sylla. I am an emeritus professor of economics at New York University, where for 25 years I was Henry Kaufman Professor of the History of Financial Institutions and Markets and Professor of Economics. Well, I'm a financial historian and an economist, so I always got interested in Hamilton because of his major financial reforms as our first Secretary of the Treasury. But I've also written a book, Alexander Hamilton, an illustrated biography, which is kind of a unique book. It's got more pictures than words almost, and it's a short biography of Hamilton, and I enjoyed doing that. And then more recently, I and a colleague, David Cowan, of the Museum of American Finance, brought out a book from Columbia University Press called Alexander Hamilton on Finance, Credit, and Debt. So one can get a quick view of Hamilton's important financial contributions by studying this new book. Or if you want to learn his whole life, you can read the illustrated biography. Hamilton was one of the key founding fathers of the United States. There's the big six. In order of their birth dates, it would be Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and Alexander Hamilton. They were the most important of the founding fathers of the United States. And Hamilton's key contributions came as a soldier, as a lawyer, as a constitutionalist, and I think most importantly as a finance minister who modernized the U.S. financial system while he was Secretary of the Treasury from 1789 to 1795. Well, he's famous for being an immigrant. Of those founding fathers of the United States, he is the only one of the big six who came in from overseas. He was an immigrant from the West Indies. He was born in the island of Nevis and came to the U.S. from the island of St. Croix as a teenager. So he was famous as an immigrant. He was also famous as a writer who called for American independence while he was still a teenager. He wrote long essays on why America should be independent. Then he became an important soldier, lieutenant colonel in George Washington's Continental Army and George Washington's right-hand man. Then he became a lawyer, and he was a member of the Constitutional Convention. He was the principal author of the Federalist Papers, a great American contribution to political science. And once the Constitution was ratified, his old commander, George Washington, made him our first Secretary of the Treasury, where he proceeded with a program of financial modernization that set the U.S. economy off and running. Well, I think Hamilton set up the financial system. The U.S. did not have a modern financial system before Hamilton became Treasury Secretary. He restructured the U.S. Revolutionary War debts into the modern Treasury bond market, which is now the largest financial market in the issues of a single issuer in the world. Now it's 21 trillion. When Hamilton restructured it, it was 77 million. He founded the first central bank, the Bank of the United States. He basically established the U.S. dollar as a modern currency in his Mint Report of 1791. And then as a result of what Hamilton did as a finance minister, other people, state governments, began to charter banks and other kinds of corporations. So banks and corporations are important parts of modern financial systems. The U.S. had them right from the beginning. And finally, since Hamilton's actions created the Treasury bond market and the stock of the Bank of the United States, securities markets jumped up. Probably the best way to think about that is the New York Stock Exchange was founded in May 1792, right in the middle of Hamilton's financial reforms, because they had so many new great securities to trade. Well, I think that one thing we should learn from Hamilton is fiscal responsibility. That is a real problem in the United States today, where we cut taxes and spend more money, and we have very large government deficits. this is what Hamilton was very much against. He stood for fiscal responsibility. In fact, he said whenever we borrow money, we ought to levy a tax to pay the interest on that debt and a little bit more to pay off the debt eventually. So Hamilton is somebody we should revisit now, because he got the U.S. going on a very good path. The financial system financed our growth, but because we've been so successful, we have gotten away from some of the original principles that made us successful. And so I think we should go back and look at what Hamilton did as a way of putting our fiscal house in order and our financial system in order. That's what we need to do today.